Hey, how you doing you all? In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto gave best night to my Valentine? Part 1, and if you want more then please leave a like, share and subscribe. Let's get in the video. Have you ever wondered what was out there, besides what you always knew, besides what you were always told? And what if there was? What if you could go to another dimension? Would you? Would you take the chance of endangering your life to do something different even if it could result in your death? Would it be worth it in the end? It seemed like any average day was far from it. The sun was high in the sky. A few clouds ran over the sun before floating past it. It was summertime, but school had let out a week ago for summer vacation. A tri-colored sun-kissed skin boy made his way down the street, his hair being tossed around by the breeze. The teen sighed and ran a hand through his hair as he turned the corner and started toward the game shop, his home. Hebamoto was his name. He was 15 years old and currently worked for his grandfather running the shop they lived in. That's right. The boy lived in a game shop, though not just with his grandfather, with his twin brother as well. Opening the door and the familiar scent of Egyptian spices and the sound of Japanese music flooded into his ears. However, not just any music, the ending theme song to the anime Naruto, Wind. Heba sighed and chuckled under his breath a bit before starting up the stairs. "Yugi, I'm home," he called as he reached the top of the stairs and looked to his left. A boy that looked like an exact copy of himself, but with pale skin, turned and looked over to his shoulder to him. "Welcome home, Heba. Did you get everything you needed at the store?" Heba nodded his head and started to the kitchen, placing the plastic bag in his hand on the table. "I did. How was your Naruto marathon?" Lately Yugi had been obsessed with this anime called Naruto. Heba himself found it interesting. It had a lot of action in it and a good storyline. But other than that, Heba didn't have any real interest in it. Men that ran around beating the crap out of others while crying over something wasn't really what he was interested in watching. Though some of it caught his attention, such as the weirdo that wore full spandex and had eyebrows thicker than his wrist. Seriously, did that man paint them on? Were they real? He also found the main character a little obnoxious, and the duck-haired kid needing a good smack upside the head. Then there was the pink-haired girl who, in all honesty, Heba just wanted to beat the shit out of. She was whiny and annoying, though Yugi told him she became a decent character later in the show. Shaking his head to come out of his thoughts, Heba started to put the food away as another episode of Naruto started. "What episode are you on by now, Yugi?" Heba asked as he took the milk from the bag and placed it into the fridge. A couple episodes after Tsunade became Hokage, came the quiet and somewhat distracted response. "Tsunade?" Heba questioned and looked toward the television as a young woman with blonde hair came on the screen. He watched for a few moments before looking away as the silver-haired ninja, he remembered was called Kakashi, came onto the TV. A man who walks around with porn in his hand, that screamed mental issues to him. Heba was grateful that he didn't live in a city like that. "Hey Heba." Once again torn from his thoughts, the teen turned to his brother and smiled to him. "Yes, Yugi? Why not come and watch with me for a little bit? You seemed interested a moment ago." Heba could hear the playful tone in Yugi's voice and couldn't help but laugh lightly and nod his head. He was interested, he couldn't help it, and so putting the last grocery away he walked over to the couch and took a seat next to his brother. Yugi smiled at this and scooted over a bit to give Heba some more room. The pale teen was excited to finally have his brother sitting next to him and watching this anime with him. Besides Solomon, their grandfather, Heba was his only family. So as a result, Yugi was extremely close to him. Or at least he thought he was. Sometimes Heba seemed a bit distant, but he wondered if that was just because Heba took on the more parental role when their grandfather was away on another trip. Heba could use some loosening up, he was always so overprotective and stiff. "So what is it you love about this anime, Yugi?" Heba questioned after a moment of silence. The blonde, Tsunade, was currently screaming at the blonde kind, Naruto, something about being called grandma. Yugi blinked at the question and tilted his head. He wasn't sure. He just seemed to enjoy watching it. He found the plot good and that he could somehow relate to Naruto. He also wanted, so badly, to have friends like Naruto did. Someone he could laugh with like Naruto did. Someone he could trust with his life. "It's just interesting to me." Heba seemed to accept this answer as he kept his eyes on the TV and did question what Yugi said. Yugi himself smiled to his brother and turned his own eyes back, resting his elbow on the couch arm with his head in his hand. It was then at that moment he saw a figure in the corner of the screen. It looked like a man, with hair similar to his own, but with crimson tips and gold bangs that shot up into his hair like lighting. Confused and curious, he grabbed the remote and paused the episodes, rewinding it slowly to look for the man again. The odd part was, he couldn't find him. Was his mind playing tricks on him? Something wrong, Yugi. The teen ignored his brother and got up from the couch, walking over to the TV where he knelt in front of it. He placed on hand on the TV and inspected each corner, looking for the man but yet still, not finding him. I don't know, I swore. I saw someone who looked like us, in a way. His words were slow and hesitant as he knew how insane he sounded, but he was sure of what he saw, almost positive. Heba sighed and stood from the couch, walking over to Yugi to kneel next to him. He placed on hand on his brother's shoulder and gave him a reassuring smile. Yugi, I think you have watched way too much Naruto lately. Really, what other explanation could he give for this? He didn't see anything and there was no way that someone had hair like theirs. It was unique, even if they were born with it. Yugi looked over to his brother and glared slightly. He knew it sounded nuts but he was sure he saw it. It was right there, though it was gone now. I am not nuts, Heba. I know what I saw, just, it's not there, now, gah. I know how it sounds, but he couldn't get his words to work for him, unable to explain what he saw or how it wasn't there now. He trailed off as he shook his head. There was no way people would believe him, not that he had anyone to tell. Yugi, no Heba. Never mind, maybe you're Yugi trailed off as he felt a pulling on his hand and froze. Heba's hand was on his shoulder, and the other was on the floor. His own hand was on the TV and the other was on the floor, so. What was pulling him? Ever so slowly the teen looked back to the TV and his eyes widened in a mix of fright and shock. The area around his right hand was glowing gold and it looked like he was getting sucked into the TV. Yugi leaned back and tried to pull his hand free, but it was as if he was getting sucked into it. Heba. Panic started to surge through him as he attempted to yank his hand from the TV. Heba moved behind him and wrapped his arms around his waist, yanking on Yugi's petite body to try and remove him from the TV, but it wasn't working. Whatever it really wanted his brother. What the hell is going on? Yugi heard his frantic brother's voice yell before. With one final strong pull, him and Heba started to fall through the television and into wherever the TV had decided to take them. Yugi groaned lightly as a sharp pain surged through his head. He moved his body around trying to get the feeling back, his hands running through the soft grass on the ground before finding working their way to his head to rub his eyes. Moving his hands back to the ground, he slowly opened his eyes and blinked several times to get them used to the light outside. That's when everything hit him at once. Grass, light, wind. Why was he outside? Wasn't he just inside watching Naruto? Wait, Naruto, TV. Yugi sat up straight so fast he could give himself whiplash and he was shocked he didn't. Glancing around, he tried to get an idea of where he was and find his brother. How could this have happened? It was just a TV. His eyes caught sight of a few trees and a confused look passed over his features. They looked different. As if someone had drawn them, if that was even possible thought. He almost mentally slapped himself at that thought. His TV just became possessed. Anything was possible at this point. Reaching a hand up, Yugi ran it over his face as a low groan came from his left. Glancing over, Yugi's amethyst eyes clashed with his confused bothers. Yugi. The TV brought us here. Where here is I don't know. He deadpanned and a delicate eyebrow shot up on his brother's forehead. Yugi couldn't help but laugh at the bewildered look his brother gave him. Do you know how nuts that sounds? His twin nodded in understanding before pushing up and offering a hand to Heba to help him up. Yes, I am aware, but it's true. You saw how it was pulling me in. Heba brushed himself off and sighed lightly. Doesn't make it any less nuts sounding. Ik. Look out. Yugi was cut off as his brother tackled him to the ground, literally, and a kunai flew past them and embedded in the tree not more than a few feet away. The two panted lightly as they looked up to the tree and started wide-eyed at the knife. A few seconds slower and one of them could have had their heads cut off or their throats slit. What was that? Yugi stuttered as three teens and one adult jumped down from the trees above them and landed in a circle, surrounding them. The one dressed in an orange jumpsuit walked over and yanked the weapon from the tree before he answered. That was a kunai. Even someone who isn't a ninja knows that. And if I was really trying, it wouldn't have missed. He exclaimed, looking back over to the twins as he spun the kunai in his hand before pocketing it. Yugi wasn't stupid, he looked exactly like Naruto. But that wasn't possible, right? Did that get warped to a cosplay convention? Naruto. Stop showing off. Do they look like ninja to you? What if you killed them with your aim? The pink-haired girl, who looked strangely identical to Sakura, shouted. Was it possible to be so perfect at cosplay you could be the character's twin? No? Well, they were certainly pulling it off. There is nothing wrong with my aim. Still on the ground, the boys blinked as the pink-haired girl and the blonde argued, and the one with raven black hair sighed and rolled his eyes at them. When a gloved hand was shoved in front of their faces, both of them turned their attention to the man who looked identical to Kakashi. Heba hesitated and stared at his hand, a bit afraid that if he took it he would lose his head. After all, one of them had just tried to kill them. After few moments of debating whether or not to take it and risk getting his throat slit, Heba placed his hand in the man's and the stranger pulled him up before helping Yugi up. My apologies, my students, mainly Naruto, can be a bit reckless. It's only Naruto. Hey, you got a problem with me, Sasuke? Who doesn't? Heba and Yugi watched as the boys, who he was really thinking by now were cosplayers, started a death glare battle before looking back to the white-haired man. Where are we? And who are you people? Although at this point Heba was pretty sure he knew, debating between cosplayers and the actually characters as insane as it sounded, he wanted to make sure. My name is Heba and this is my brother Yugi, he introduced as he gestured to his twin. The man looked a bit confused before he smiled, his one eye closing with a U-like look. At that instant, both twins crossed cosplay off the list. No one, no human, could do that, they were positive of it. You're in the land of fire outside a village called Konoha, currently in its forest to be exact, and my name is Kakashi. I'm a Junin ninja and these are my genin students, Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura. The three mentioned looked to the boy and smiled, all except Sasuke, and Heba paled to almost Yugi's natural skin color. Yugi just stared in complete shock, eyes searching around them all as if he was expecting them to break out into laughter and call it all a joke. They were actually sucked into a different world. Heba reached over and pinched himself, feeling pain shoot through his arm at the action. It seemed it wasn't a dream either. Yugi, Heba, is this real? I think so, sweet Ra, what have we gotten ourselves into? Kakashi gave a confused and somewhat suspicious look in his one eye before it vanished completely and he was back to his emotionless face. The genin narrowed their eyes a bit, though Sakura's was more in concern. Was this a dream? Did they hit their heads or something? Oddly enough, they were praying that was the case and they would wake up eventually. After taking a few moments to get over their initial shock, the boys took a few steps back and looked to each other wide-eyed. There was no way this could be real, but it seemed to be the only explanation, especially since Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura and Kakashi were staring at them, with looks of suspicion. How did this happen? Was the first thing Heba asked when him and Yugi were, hopefully far enough away to not be heard by the others. Knowing Kakashi though they probably could be heard. How should I know? We were just sitting calmly in the living room when suddenly Out TV had a mind of its own and decided it wanted to give us a one-way trip to Naruto land. Yugi looked over to Kakashi, who now had a brow raised and seemed to be contemplating things. For their sake, Yugi hoped it wasn't their death. We shouldn't talk about this here, Heba. We don't want to be accused of being rogue ninja and executed. Heba nodded in agreement to this and sighed as he ran his hand through his hair. What do you think we should do, Yugi? The teen swallowed thickly and walked over to Kakashi, offering the man a small yet frightened smile. Kakashi-sensei, can you take us to see Hokage-sama? With any luck, maybe Hiruzen Sarutobi was still the Hokage. The old man was always wise and could probably tell them how to get home, if they could get home and the old man believed them. Kakashi nodded his head and looked over to the genin, the smile on his face returning though to Heba and Yugi it didn't seem real. Practice is over for today, I'll see you guys tomorrow. He then looked back to the twins and gestured to the left, follow me. The Junin turned and started to walk toward the village as Heba and Yugi followed him. After a few moments, Kakashi looked over his shoulder to the twins and the suspicious look returned to his face as he asked quietly, so where are you two from? Swallowing thickly, Heba looked over to Yugi for help, since he seemed to watch and know Naruto the most. Maybe there was some tiny village in the middle of nowhere the great prodigy ninja wouldn't know. However, looking at Yugi's face, he could tell the boy was as clueless as him. Yugi shifted lightly and looked away from Kakashi's piercing gaze. We're from very far away. He could feel his heart rate pick up and the gaze of the Junin ninja never leave him. He didn't know what else to say. Thought Kakashi had been pretty much everywhere and would know in an instant if he was lying to him. Kakashi only got more suspicious at the answer, and as they entered Konoha village he tried to press the boys for more information. He didn't think they were ninja, but they were still strange. What is the name of the village you are from? Before the two could get a chance to answer, there was a blur of white fur and Yugi was knocked off of his feet and onto the ground with a DG licking his face. Ah! He giggled as he tried to push the dog off of him. Stop. Heba backed away a bit and looked at his brother on the ground and the white dog with brown fur on its ears. The dog's name was Akamaru. Heba remembered the dog belonged to Kiba Inuzuka and was a ninkin. As if on cue, the little pup's owner rounded the corner and skidded to a stop in front of the four of them. He panted lightly as he looked down to Yugi and plucked Akamaru off of him. Akamaru, you know better than to run off like that. What has gotten into you? The pup whimpered and folded his ears back as Yugi picked himself up off of the ground and brushed his clothes off. Kiba looked to the boy and offered an apologetic smile. I'm really sorry about that. He's usually much better behaved and doesn't get that close to strangers. Actually, the Inuzuka wandered off as he seemed puzzled by the last part. Yugi smiled and extended a hand to the boy. It's all right, really. I love animals and there was no harm done. My name is Yugi and that's my brother Heba. We're new here. And lost. Heba mumbled. It's a pleasure to meet you. Kiba grinned and took the boy's hand, shaking it as he introduced himself and Akamaru. My name is Kiba Inuzuka and this is my partner Akamaru. I hope you guys stay here at least for a while. You seem really cool and I wouldn't mind introducing you to everyone. With that he released the boy's hand and turned to leave. See ya. So not even an hour here and we're already making friends. Heba spoke with a smile before looking over to the Junin who had his nose stuck in his book. The teen's eye twitched at that and he was half tempted to rip that book from the ninja's hands and destroy it, but decided that would be a deadly mistake. What way to the Hokage building, Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi looked up from his book and smiled with that weird one-eye smile and then turned, pointing to the big building with the red roof. It's that building there. I have to go and run some errands. I believe you can get there on your own. Heba and Yugi looked to each other and then nodded in agreement that they could before looking back to the Junin, who was gone. He doesn't even wait for our answer. What if we couldn't? Heba grumbled, shaking his head. We shouldn't be surprised. It is Kakashi. Yugi commented before sighing and starting toward the tower. Come on Heba. Sarutobi is a busy man, we shouldn't dilly-dally. The two teens took off toward the Hokage tower, looking around and taking in everything in the village. It was weird, seeing it in the show and then having it in person. It all seemed like a really wildly vivid dream, but they knew it wasn't. They could feel pain, smell the scents, feel the wind. All of this and more proved over and over again that it wasn't a dream. Not too long after they reached the Hokage tower and entered the building, trying to ignore the stares they were getting. They reached the big red door with the symbol for fire on the door. You knock. Heba blinked and looked over to his brother. He could tell Yugi was so scared he was actually shaking inside. Yugi, it's going to be all right. You know Sarutobi. He's a very kind old man, he's not just going to order us executed. Yugi nodded even though he didn't quite believe Heba. If they were accused of being rogue ninja, he would have the Anbu execute them before they could so much as blink. It also didn't help that he had felt like they were being watched since they had arrived, and there wasn't a doubt in his mind that it was the Anbu watching them. Sighing again, Heba walked over to the door and knocked on it lightly. Enter. Gripping the door handle, Heba opened the large door slowly and slipped inside, Yugi not too far behind him. The room was circular and across from them was a desk with an old man in a white robe and a red hat with the fire symbol on it. Next to him was a man in a ninja uniform with brown hair pulled back into a spiky ponytail. There was a scar that ran across the bridge of his nose. Welcome boys. I am the Hokage of the Firelands Hiruzen Sarutobi. This man to my left is Amino Iruka. How can we help you? Heba swallowed thickly and rubbed the back of his head before looking to Yugi for some sort of assistance. They didn't think very far ahead in this. What were they to say? Hi, we're lost and need to get back to our dimension. Can you help? That would go over well. Yugi looked down to his feel before looking back up to the old man. His expression was blank and he seemed to be waiting patiently. Iruka, however, seemed to be confused and a little concerned. Swallowing thickly and sighing lightly, he forced out the words. We need help, we're not from here, and by here I mean, well, you see, no matter how hard the team tried he couldn't get the words out. Dropping his head and staring at the ground, he fidgeted lightly. A sigh came from the old man and he looked up to his assistant. These boys clearly had a big problem and it would perhaps make it easy to explain if he promised it would stay between him and them. Iruka, please leave us alone for a moment. Come back this afternoon and we will continue our discussion. Iruka glanced at the boys and then back to Sarutobi with a worried look. Not being one to disobey a direct order, though, he bowed to the Hokage and started to the door, glancing at the twins one last time before leaving. Once the door closed behind them, Sarutobi laced his fingers together and placed his hands in front of his mouth, glancing at the boys with a thoughtful look on his face. All right, boys. I promise what you say stays between me and you. Unless it is of vital survival to this village, then for the sake of my people I will tell everyone. Understood? At once the twins nodded their heads in understanding. Good. Now I can tell you have a story and I want to hear what it is. So tell me what is bothering you. Heba swallowed thickly and looked to his feet once again. You have to understand, Hokage-sama. What we have to tell you will sound impossible and, well, for less than a better choice of words, nuts. Sarutobi cocked an elegant eyebrow but nodded his head in understanding, gesturing with his hand for him to continue. You see, Hokage-sama, well, Yugi swallowed thickly. We're not from this dimension. After the lead-like feeling words left his throat, Yugi couldn't believe he said them. He probably sounded like a complete nutjob and wouldn't be shocked if the old man called for some Anbu or worse, Morino Ibiki, commanding officer of the Konoha Torture and Interrogation Force. Just the thought of the man made a shiver run down Yugi's spine. I see, interesting. The words floated around the twins' head and Yugi looked back up wide-eyed to the Hokage. There wasn't any look of disbelief on the man's face. In fact, there was a look of interest on his face. Why, you believe me? Sarutobi nodded his head before he sighed and leaned back in his chair. You see, boys. A lot of strange things have happened that I would actually believe this. Also, your chakra is not like any kind I have sensed before. Also, even for a non-ninja, you are dressed oddly. Tell me, where are you from and how did you get here? Looking to each other and then back to Sarutobi, the two teens started the explanation of what happened and how they got here. For the safety of this world thought, the teens decided it would be best to leave out the fact that their world is a manga and anime in theirs. Once they were finally done explaining, Sarutobi stood and turned toward the window, gazing outside over the city of Konohagakure. That is some tale you have. And before you ask, yes, I believe it. However, I am sorry to say, boys, I don't know how to get you home, or if there is even a way to get you home. He turned to them at that point and gave an apologetic look. At being told there may not even be a way to get them home, Heba sighed heavily and looked down to the ground. Yugi had to bite back tears and wrapped his arms around himself. What can we do then? I suggest you build a life for yourself here. I'm sure things will be hard at first since it's extremely different than where you were originally from, but the people here are kind and willing to help. I can also give you some money to get started off on, and if you want to train to become a ninja, I can get you into a team. Sarutobi went to his desk and pulled out a small pouch and tossed it to Heba, who easily caught it. With your odd chakra, what you will be able to do should be interesting to test. By the way, what are your last names? Moto. Heba answered as he counted through the coin purse. They apparently also use yen, and by the amount in the purse plus what he and Yugi have, there was about enough together to survive off of for a while. Heba looked up after he was done and blinked at the look on the Hokage's face. He seemed a bit shocked and confused at the same time. Hokage-sama? Something wrong? Sarutobi blinked and shook his head before gesturing to the door. You may leave now unless you have any questions. The two nodded, though they didn't quite believe nothing was up. They let it go, however, and bowed before turning to the door and leaving. They started down the hall and out of the building before Heba grabbed Yugi's wrist and pulled him to a stop. Where do we go, Yugi? We have to buy an apartment and then stock it with food and furniture. He wandered off as both their stomachs growled at the mention of food. We could start at Ichiraku Ramen. Heba nodded his head and then looked around before looking back to Yugi. What way is that? Both boys sighed heavily. When watching Naruto, the town never seemed so big. Now that they were actually there, it was like being a mouse in a maze. Look out. Heba and Yugi looked up and then around for the voice that spoke, but by the time they found it, it was too late. A big black dog smacked into Heba and knocked him hard onto the ground. Yugi couldn't help but burst into laughter at it as the dog started to cover him in licks. The boy managed to get the dog off of him and sat up as a shaggy blonde skidded to a stop in front of him and started apologizing. Sorry. Dragon and I were training and we didn't see you there and he ran into you. I really am sorry. Heba shook his head and smiled to the blonde. It's all right. I am not hurt. He stood up and brushed himself off before offering a hand to the man. I am Heba and this is Yugi. We just moved here. The blonde took the offered hand and shook it. Nice to meet you. I'm Joey Wheeler and this is my Ninken dragon. Yugi blinked at this news and tilted his head. Wouldn't that make you a member of the Inuzuka clan? Joey nodded and then rubbed the back of his neck. My dad was an Inuzuka, my mom was a regular human. I took her last name for personal reasons. The Inuzukas don't like it, but they know my reason for it and respect that. Do you know Kiba then? We met him earlier today. Heba questioned as he rubbed Dragon's ear, smiling as the pup wagged his tail and titled his head. Kiba is my cousin. He looked to the teens and saw the look of confusion on their faces and how lost they seemed to be. Knowing what it's like to be different, Joey decided to offer some help. Hey, if you guys want I can show you around, introduce you to some people and tell you more about the clans. If you're going to live here, it's stuff you should know. Most people learn it in shinobi school as a pre-genin, but I can teach you. Yugi smiled brightly at that idea and Heba nodded his head. I can't think of a better place to start. Thank you, Joey. Their stomachs growled again and Joey laughed at them as Yugi blushed a bright red and Heba looked away. How about I start by showing you to the best Roman street in town? Thanks, Joey. I think that's a good idea. Yugi mumbled and Joey laughed again before turning and starting to lead them to Ichiraku Ramen. Heba and Yugi followed Joey through the town, making sure to be careful to avoid people and keep up, as Joey talked to them about the different clans that existed in this town. My family, the Inuzuka clan, is a family of shinobi in Konohagakure known for their use of ninken as fighting companions. They're easily identified by the distinctive red fang markings on their cheeks. Joey looked over to them and pointed to said marks in his cheeks before continuing. The Sarutobi clan is an influential clan. It has produced several notable members who have held positions of high authority, such as Hokage like Hiruzen, the one you met not too long ago. He looked over to us and we nodded our head to tell him we understood. Heba and Yugi knew a lot of this already but decided to humor Joey and let him continue telling them about them. Joey smiled and looked back in front of them as he continued to talk. The Aburame clan is one of the 5 noble clans. They're characterized by their use of insects as weapons. At birth, members of the clan are offered to a special breed of insects such as Kakaichu as a nest, residing just under their host's skin. These insects will then live in symbiosis with their host. My friend Shino is a member of them. An involuntary shiver ran down Yugi's spine at that and Heba looked away in disgust. The thought of bugs living under his skin was just gross. He would probably hate being born to that clan in all honesty. Joey laughed at their reaction and continued on with his lesson. The Akamichi clan is another one of the 5 noble clans. Members of the clan possess great physical strength and are able to quickly convert calories into chakra, which they then use in their secret techniques. The Hagoromo clan is one of the earlier clans which existed during the war-torn era preceding the creation of the hidden villages. Joey stopped for a moment to collect his breath and looked back to the twins again to make sure they were still with him. Once they were, he looked back in front and turned a corner as he continued with his lesson. The Nara clan is known for their intelligence, ninjutsu that entails the manipulation of shadows. Shikaku Nara was the head of the clan and his son Shikamaru is one of my friends. Heba smiled at the thought of Shikamaru. He was a very bright boy from what Heba remembered and he had always wanted to challenge him to a game. He figured the man could actually give him a good go and he was always looking for someone else to play against. Joey then let out a long sigh, causing both boys to look to him as a dark look came over the boy's face. I know of 2 more clans. Firstly is the Uchiha clan. They were one of the 5 noble clans, and were also presumed to be the village's most powerful clan, producing shinobi that were exceptionally talented and battle-oriented. Together were one of the originally clans that founded Konohagakure, but are now almost extinct after the events of the clan massacre. The clan was murdered by none other than Sasuke's older brother Itachi. He is a wanted man now. Heba and Yugi shared a look. Both knew the truth behind the Uchiha massacre and knew that it was Itachi who saundered the clan, but the reason behind why he did it was what got both of the kids. They wished they could change what happened to them. It wasn't fair to Itachi or Sasuke. Joey didn't notice their looks and continued with the last clan he knew about. And the last one I know about is the Hyuga clan. They're another one of the 5 noble clans. All members born into this clan possess the Byakugan, a Kekkei Genkai that gives them extended fields of vision and the ability to see through solid objects and even the chakra circulatory system, amongst other things, and expel chakra from any of the tenketsu in their body. Joey took a deep breath and rounded another corner before coming to a stop. Yugi and Heba stopped behind him and looked up to Joey as he pointed to a girl with short blue hair and gray eyes. Speak of a Hyuga, there is Hinata. Hinata is the elder daughter of the Hyuga clan head, Heishi Hyuga. She's a sweet girl. He started over to her and Yugi and Heba followed behind him. Hey Hinata. Said girl blinked and looked over to Joey shyly. She offered a smile to him as Joey and then looked to the boys behind him. They were dressed oddly, even for civilians. If they were civilians they did have chakra. Hij Joey. WH who are Y or F friends. Heba smiled and stepped forward, offering a hand to Hinata. Hi Hinata, my name is Heba Moto and this is my twin brother Yugi. He introduced and Hinata took his hand, shaking it. Pleasure to meet you. Hey Hinata, where are the boys? Joey asked. Hinata took her hand back and started to poke her pointer fingers together, a habit Yugi knew she did when she was nerves, and looked down to her feet. And Naruto is at Ichiraku. Kiba is W with S Shino practicing. S Shikamaru is W with Choji. Ino and Asuma Sensei on AM mission. I don't know WH where Kaiba. Why Yami and Ayatem are. She answered and Heba and Yugi exchanged a look at the unfamiliar names. Heba arched a brow and mouthed the words, what clan are they from? To his twin to see if he happened to know where on earth they were from. Yugi shrugged and mouthed back to his twin, never even heard of them. Joey noticed the silent exchange and smiled to the twins, probably excited at being able to give another lesson. Yami and Atem are members of the Sennin clan. They're a member of the 5 noble clans with the head being Otnamkanen Sennin and Atem next to be clan head. The clan is best known for producing prodigies which currently Yami and Atem are. I swear they're a bunch of geniuses and none of us other genin have been able to beat them in battle. Joey scrunched his nose up at that and Heba had a feeling he had tried to beat them, many times. Why are they still genin then? Yugi asked and Joey looked over to him shrugging. The Chunin exams haven't passed yet. It's coming up soon though. Speaking of which, I wonder if you guys are going to join a team and participate with us. Joey wondered looking over to Hinata who shrugged her shoulder. Heba tilted his head in confusing. Chunin exams. Joey gave Heba a confused look, seeming bewildered about how the team didn't know something like that. Even the smallest of villages knew what they were. Yugi was the one who answered this time. The Chunin selection exams are a type of test to test the abilities of the genin. If the genin perform well, they will be considered for promotion to Chunin. How long do we have before the test is going to take place? Joey shrugged and rubbed the back of his head. Probably in a month or so. They don't tell us till it gets closer. We don't even know what's going to happen, it changes every year so we don't know what to expect. Joey then looked over to Hinata and tilted his head to the side. We're heading over to Ichiraku, wanna come with? Hinata shook her head and looked down to her feet. I am waiting for Kurenai sensei. Joey nodded and smiled to the girl before motioning to Heba and Yugi to follow him. The boys said goodbye to Hinata before following Joey down a few more blocks till they reached their destination, Ichiraku. They walked through the curtains and took a seat at the bar next to the tree genin from before, Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke. Naruto looked over and gaped at the 2 boys. He had thought that Sarutobi would have thrown them out of the village or returned them home. You are the guys from before. What are you doing here? Joey looked between them. You know each other? Not really. Our team found them in the forest training grounds. Naruto answered and Sasuke scowled and rolled his eyes. Ya Naruto almost took the pale one's head off with a kunai. It was an accident, not what you said in the forest. If I recalled your exact words were, if I was trying, I wouldn't have missed. Joey tuned their argument and Sakura's annoying yelling out as an old man with a white hat walked over, smiling. Joseph, about time you came back. I always make good money with you here. What can I get you? Ah, I would like the usual Tucci and the same for my friends here. Joey spoke as he motioned to Heba and Yugi as he handed the money to Tucci for their meals. Heba smiled and waved to the man as Yugi smiled to him. He nodded his head and yelled to his daughter Ayame the orders before turning back to the kids. Hey boys, my name is Tucci, I am the owner of Ichiraku. Yugi smiled, already knowing that Ichiraku was the best ramen stand in all of Naruto, and Yugi had always wondered what their food would taste like. Pleasure to meet you, Tucci. I am Yugi Moto and this is my twin brother, Heba. Tucci nodded and Ayame, a girl with long brown hair pulled into a ponytail, walked over and placed the bowls in front of the boys. Yugi and Heba ate silently as the others did, occasionally talking and learning small things about each other. The twins learned that Joey's Ninken dragon was slightly larger than the normal dogs his age, and Joey thought that he wouldn't get too much bigger when he grew up. They also learned that Joey was their age, 15, whereas Yami, Atem, and Seto were 16. Wait. Yugi said and turned to Joey with a confused look on his face. Don't most genin enter the genin exams when they're 12 or 13? At Joey's nod, Yugi got even more confused. Why are the boys you call prodigies 16 and still genin? Wouldn't they have taken the exam by now if they're 16? Our sensei wouldn't enter us. A new deep, baritone voice said from behind them. Yugi and Heba's eyes widened and they turned slowly in their chair to see two boys who looked almost identical to them, but where Yugi and Heba's hair and eyes were amethyst, theirs were crimson. They were also taller, and where Yugi and Heba's golden bangs framed their faces, the boys' golden bangs shot up into their hair as well as framed their faces. Why wouldn't he if you're prodigies? Yugi questioned, and Yami sighed, rolling his eyes slightly at the teen. Someone's nosy, isn't he? Yugi blushed and Heba growled at the man. You don't have to be an ass, my brother was just curious. Atem narrowed his eyes and stepped forward. Your brother should mind his own business. Heba stood and walked in front of his brother protectively. You and your brother should learn to be nice. Boys, we're all from the same village. Atem, back down, they're not threatening you, they asked a simple question. Yami and Atem looked over their shoulder as a man with sun-kissed skin walked over to them and placed a hand on Atem's shoulder. Mahad-sensei. Atem greeted. Mahad smiled before looking to Heba, who was still standing in front of his brother protectively, his guard still up as if expecting Atem to change his mind and charge at them. My name is Mahad Shinken and I am the leader to Team 5. It consists of these two and Joseph. Joey grinned, nodded his head to his team. Hey, where have you guys been? Training, like you should have been. Since you are the weakest in our group. Yami responded, and Joey lowered his head, looking down to Dragon. Suddenly, it all clicked in Yugi's head. His eyes widened and he looked over to Mahad, who was by Joey's side and giving him encouraging words. I get it now, I get why you refused to enter them in the Chunin exams. He spoke quietly, making the others in the room look at him in confusion. They may be prodigies and amazing in ninjutsu, genjutsu and taijutsu, but they're missing one of the most important parts of being a ninja. A slow smile made its way onto Mahad's face as Yami and Atem's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Have you told them, or are they to figure it out themselves? Yugi questioned Mahad, and Mahad shook his head. I want them to figure it out, but you are incredibly perspective. I have never seen you boys around before. Who are you, if I may ask? Yugi Moto and the stiff overprotective boy who looks like me is my twin brother, Heba. Yugi responded, and Heba turned around to face him, a growl coming from his throat. Yugi rolled his eyes and looked back to Mahad, who had wide eyes. Moto? He questioned, and Heba looked to him as well, confusion on his face. Yes, why? Mahad shook his head and smiled again. No reason, just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. He responded before heading to the exit of the shop. Atem, Yami, Joseph, meet me at the usual training spot tomorrow, 5 a.m. sharp. With that, the ninja vanished. Joey groaned and dropped his head onto the table. What does that man have against sleep? Atem rolled his eyes and walked over to the bar, sitting down next to Heba as Yami sat down next to him. So, Yugi, right? Yugi nodded and looked over to Atem as the man continued to speak. Why is it sensei won't enroll us in the Chunin exams? Yugi smiled and rolled his eyes before hopping off his stool, pulling Heba with him. Honestly, the answer is simple. But I won't tell you. Mahad-sensei wants you to figure it out for yourself. Now we have to go. We still haven't bought our apartment here and we really need somewhere to sleep tonight. With that the teens started to leave, shouting a goodbye to Joey and the others. They wandered around a bit till they came to the ninja housing building where he knew Naruto also lived. They walked into the apartment management building and stopped in front of the desk where the little old lady was behind. "Hello boys, how can I help you?" she asked, and Heba smiled to her. "We need a 2-bedroom apartment. Do you have one?" She nodded her head. "I do, and it comes furnished." The boys nodded and she sat them down, telling them the rules. They could set up traps to protect their house, not that they knew how. Pets were allowed. No wild parties unless they're quiet, don't destroy the place. Typical things they had expected. Both of them signed the papers and Heba gave her the money she needed. "All right boys, we're all set. Your apartment is number 201. Please enjoy, and if you needed anything don't hesitate to come get me." Heba nodded and took the keys. They walked up the stairs and down the hall till they found their apartment. Heba unlocked the door before opening it and walking inside, Yugi right behind him. When they walked in, they walked right into the kitchen. Heba walked over and placed the keys down before exploring. The bedrooms were right next to each other and there was one bathroom. The twins walked back into the kitchen and Yugi shrugged. "It's nice." Heba nodded and kept looking around. He couldn't explain it, but since leaving the Hokage's office, he felt like someone was watching him. It made a shiver run down his spine and he tried to shake the feeling off as his imagination, but he couldn't. "Shall we go get the groceries?" Yugi asked, pulling Heba back from him thoughts. "I guess. Do you know where to go? We passed the market on the way here." Heba nodded and followed Yugi out of the apartment and down the stairs. They wandered through the town and Heba picked out the groceries that would last them a long time. Once they were done with food, they wandered back to the apartment and put them away. They sat down at the table to take a breather. "We still need to get clothes." Heba sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Before we do, Heba," Yugi spoke quietly, making Heba look up to him. "We should clarify something. Are we going to become ninja of Konohagakure? Are we going to lay down our lives to protect this village and its people? Are we even willing to risk our lives for anything?" Heba blinked at the question before a small smile came onto his face. "You know, just as much as I do, that if we can do something to help people, it's in our nature to do so. You and I, we can't just stand by the sidelines if we know that there is something we can do to help. I say, if we have what it takes to become ninja, we should." Yugi grinned and stood up from his chair, grabbing Heba's hand and dragging him down the stairs of the apartment and back to the market. They bought many different types of clothes they would need and want before heading back to the apartment. They went into their separate room and put their clothes. Once finished organizing the house and setting up their rooms the way they wanted them, the two boys ate dinner before heading to bed, deciding to talk to Sarutobi tomorrow morning. "Yugi and I woke up early that day, rising with the sun. We had wanted to get to the Hokage's house early so that we could figure out what we were going to do the rest of the day to prepare, as ninjas. I will admit, when I woke up, I was still shocked to be here still. I was really hoping what happened yesterday was just a dream." Yugi had made breakfast and we sat at the table while we talked about what happened yesterday. "Yugi, what you said yesterday to those hotheads, teacher, I have a feeling I know what it is that is holding them back," I commented as he took a bite of his eggs. "Judging by the way they treated their own teammate in us, who they never met, I had a feeling that it was teamwork that was holding them back. Since teamwork was the most important thing to a ninja. I know what it is. You saw the way they treated Joey, right? Their own teammate." He shook his head and I knew in that moment that I was right. A smile formed onto my lips and I shook my head. "Those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum," I quoted, and Yugi laughed. "Kakashi-sensei, who would have thought you would quote the pervert?" He was right though. Without working together, you are destined to fail. Teamwork is the most vital thing to a ninja because they have to be able to put their lives in the hands of others, their teammates. If you can't trust your teammates, can't treat them with respect, you may as well not be a ninja. Yugi blinked and stared at me in shock before smiling slightly and nodding his head in agreement. We took our plates to the sink and cleaned them before changing into what we had decided to use as our ninja outfits. Mine consisted of a pair of knee-length black shorts, a fish-necked long-sleeve shirt with a back shirt and a black vest over it that both stopped right before my stomach, and finally the standard ninja shoes that were black. Once I was changed, I walked out of the room and over to Yugi, who was waiting by the door. I gave my brother a once-over to see how he chose to dress. He was in a pair of spandex shorts that reached his knees, a black kimono-like shirt that went to his mid-thighs with a slit on the sides, an amethyst ribbon tie around his waist, and finally the standard ninja shoes that were black. "You look like a girl, Yugi. Why on earth did you choose a kimono? It looks like a dress, isn't that what the girls wear here pretty much?" Yugi rolled his eyes at me and smiled. "No, it's not, and because it is really easy to move around in considering that it's so light. Look, you are stronger and better in observing your surroundings, whereas I am better with speed and planning. And in this I can move around a lot easier." "If you say so, but I still think you look like a girl." I had to admit, though, it did look good on him and it didn't seem like too much of a dress, especially with that fish next under the kimono. It looked more like a cover top, which is probably what he was using it for. "Your top leaves the stomach uncovered. It could be an easy target, so you better be careful." I nodded in agreement to that and Yugi turned, opening the door and walking out. He closed it behind us and locked the door. We headed down the stairs and to the Hokage building that wasn't very far from us. I had also noticed it was right in front of the monument and next to the academy. We walked past the academy and reached the Hokage tower. The ninja at the door opened it for us and Yugi and I walked inside. The constant stares we got from Junin and Special Junin were a little unnerving. We soon reached the red door that led to the Hokage's office and once again, I knocked. It wasn't long before Sarutobi's voice gave us the permission we needed. "Enter." I opened the door and Yugi and I walked inside, closing the door behind us. We walked to the center of the room and Yugi bowed to the old man. I arched a brow at him but followed suit, doing the same thing before straightening back up. The old man was not alone again. He was with the pineapple head guy whose name was Iruka if I remember correctly, the porn freak Kakashi, and was that man in a full-body spandex suit. I openly stared at him, a little wearied out. I searched my memory of the show and if I remembered right, his name was Guy Sensei and he had this mini look-alike named Rock Lee. "Heba, Yugi, good of you to come back. What can I do for you?" Sarutobi greeted, making me snap my head back to him. "Ah, Yugi and I were wondering if we could take you up on your offer to let us become ninja of Konohagakure." I answered a little nervously. Kakashi's one eye widened before going back to his emotionless stare and Guy beamed, bright smile lighting up his face that made me shiver slightly. "Oh, look at this. A prime example of the power of youth. Oh, how lovely it is to see kids these days wanting to do all they can to help their village. It is so unbelievably wonderful, and you—" "Please, sir, stop talking." I interrupted and Guy gaped at me while Kakashi's eye did that crescent moon-shaped thing again. I couldn't tell if it meant he was smiling or smirking. Damn, I wished he would just not wear that stupid mask of his so I could see what the hell emotions he was feeling. Sarutobi smiled and nodded his head. "Of course. But we will need someone to test you to see if you even have what it takes to become a ninja. Normally you would take the school's exam, but considering how old you boys are, we will do it differently. First, we will give you a written exam to see if you know enough about the ninja world. Then we will see if you can learn some basic fighting including ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu." Yugi and I nodded our head in agreement and Sarutobi looked over to Iruka. "Get the end of the year written test from last year, Iruka. We will have them take it now, right here where I can watch them." Iruka nodded and walked out of the room. I walked over to one of the couches and sat down as Yugi sat on the couch across from me. I ran through my head all of the Naruto trivia I knew and what Yugi had told me. Unlike Yugi, I didn't know as much, but I knew a lot, and enough to probably pass this with almost flying colors. "Are you boys sure you can do this?" I blinked and looked up to Sarutobi, who seemed to have a worried look on his face. I hesitated for a moment before nodding my head. I did. I was sure I could pass this if given a chance. Yugi simply smiled brightly and nodded enthusiastically. "Don't count us out yet, Hokage-sama, we may very well surprise you." Sarutobi smiled and shook his head, chuckling. "I never underestimate someone. It's an unwritten rule of a ninja." I mumbled, causing everyone to look at me. "Never underestimate your opponent or a teammate, but never overestimate them either." Sarutobi nodded and Guy beamed. I sensed he was about to go into another youth speech, but we were saved from it by Iruka returning. Iruka placed the tests on the coffee table in front of us with pencils. I thanked him and he nodded before Sarutobi cleared the room so we could take the test in silence with only him to watch us. You boys may begin and take your time, there is no rush. I flipped the test over and wrote my name at the top before scanning the test. It was a simple short answer and some multiple choice. The beginning was trivia about the village, and then it went into history about the nations and ended with vocabulary. I nodded my head in acceptance and began. Name the Hokugais in order. I rolled my eyes at the question but bit my bottom lip in thought. I knew a few of them, including the fact that Naruto's dad was one of them, the fourth to be exact. I let out a long sigh before writing them down, hoping I would get their names right. Hashirama Senju, Tobirama Senju, Hiruzen Sarutobi, Minato Namikaze. I blinked and immediately started to erase the name. Yes, let's give out information to the future on the test. I mentally scolded myself before moving on to the next question. Eventually I reached the last questions. I knew Yugi was already done, but that didn't shock me. He did know this place like the back of his own hand. The test was pretty straightforward and I had confidence in my answers. The final part was easy, to explain the differences between ninjutsu, taijutsu and genjutsu. Ninjutsu is the art of making hand seals and needing chakra to perform a jutsu. When you make the appropriate hand seal, your desired technique comes forth. Performing ninjutsu techniques require full concentration and if interrupted, will not work. It only takes a few seconds to successfully execute a ninjutsu technique. However, some can take much longer. Ninjutsu is probably the most used attack type out of the three main categories. Taijutsu is the hand-to-hand combat part of a ninja's training. It deals with no hand seals and chakra is focused throughout the entire body. Genjutsu techniques are mostly illusionary techniques. These techniques cause the opponent to hallucinate and make them see things that are not really there. I closed the test and took it over to Sarutobi, who took it with a smile on his face. I sat back down and Yugi walked over to me, sitting next to me on the couch. How did you think you did? He asked quietly and I shrugged. Honestly, it wasn't that hard. I stumbled a bit on the history of the village, but overall I think I did all right. You? I asked, looking over to my brother, and he blushed lightly. That means he probably aced it. I laughed and shook my head, smiling at Yugi. You aced it, didn't you? Yugi blushed even more and shrugged his shoulders. Who knows? I do. We blinked and looked over to Sarutobi, who was sitting with his hands once again folded in front of his mouth. Yugi, you did ace it. Heba, you got a 98. Your scores are in the top rank and are close to those of a genius. I am honestly amazed at how people who are not of this realm got such high scores. I swallowed thickly and quickly started to rack my brain for some sort of answer before he called in someone to torment the answers out of us. I thought back to yesterday and all the lessons Joey gave us on the family clans. We hung out with Joey Wheeler yesterday and he gave us a lot of background information. Some of the words on the test we have heard of before in our world. I was amazed at how easily I had been able to answer that confidently. Sarutobi seemed to contemplate my answer for a moment before nodding his head in acceptance. Joseph is a bright lad. He never actually shows it, but when he does, he is a force to be reckoned with. I nodded and laughed at that. He was extremely bright. I was shocked about how easily the words rolled off his tongue about the clans. Sarutobi snapped his finger and a girl appeared out of nowhere. She was dressed in what I recognized as an Anbu uniform. It consisted of black clothing, a gray flak jacket, metal arm guards and gloves, ninja sandals with spikes, 3 ninja pouches on her back waist and a signature spiral tattoo on her shoulder. Her mask appeared to have several spirals over the eyes and the forehead of the mask that looked like fire. I couldn't tell what animal it was though. Phoenix, I need you to fetch me Mahad. I have some kids I want him to look at. The girl nodded and vanished with a few simple hand sigh. A moment later she was back with the man from yesterday. Mahad looked to us before looking to Sarutobi as the Anbu vanished. You wanted to see me, Hokage-sama? Sarutobi nodded and motioned to us. These boys want to become ninja. I need you to find out their affinity and see if they have what it takes to become ninja. They passed the written exam with flying colors. Their scores could have rivaled that of Yami in attempts. Mahad seemed stunned by that before he covered it up and nodded his head. I will do my best, Hokage-sama. He turned to us and smiled, motioning to follow him, before heading to the door. We followed behind him as he led us out of the tower and down the village. Where are we going, sensei? Yugi asked and Mahad looked over to us. We are going to the training grounds in the forest. Yami, Atem and Joey are already there still training. We nodded and I looked around. The feeling of being watched had once again returned and it was slightly unnerving. I wanted it to go away but I had a feeling that perhaps it was the Anbu. If it was then it was probably because the Hoka guy wants to make sure that we were not a threat to the village, which would make sense. Yug. Heb. I blinked from my thoughts and looked up as Joey and his dog dragon ran over to us. What are you doing here? I smiled and motioned to his sensei. Mahad sensei is going to see if we have what it takes to be ninja. I answered easily and Joey's jaw dropped before Mahad walked over and snapped it closed with his hand. Joseph, have I not given you a task to do? Joey pouted but nodded his head and smiled to us before running off with Dragon. Mahad watched him go before turning to us and handing us each a piece of paper. This paper will let you know what your affinity is. Now, do either of you know what an affinity is? My brother and I nodded. Every person has chakra that has an affinity towards one of 5 types: fire, wind, lighting, earth, and water. It is a characteristic that seems to be genetic, since whole clans sometimes share the same affinity, but it is not always. Yugi answered and I continued after him. To find out what affinity someone has, pieces of paper made from a special type of tree are used. They react to even the slightest hint of chakra. The reaction depends on the nature underlying in the chakra. Mahad blinked but nodded his head. We seemed to have surprised him. I wondered why that was. It seemed like common knowledge to me. Anyway, you're going to have to feed your chakra into it. In order to do that, just focus in the paper and concentrate on feeding a part of yourself into it. Just try and push all your energy into the paper. Yugi and I looked to each other before looking to the paper in our hands. I let my eyes close and focused on the inner strength within me. It was a trick me and Yugi had learned in our martial arts class, though we usually used it for mediation. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly, emptying my mind and concentrating all my energy onto the paper. After a few moments I felt a warm bubbling feeling in my stomach. I opened my eyes as the feeling flowed through me into my hand that held the paper. I focused on pushing that feeling from my hand to the paper and right before my eyes it ignited in fire. I turned my hand over as I opened it so that the paper continued to burn in my palm before turning to ash. Heba, your affinity is fire. I blinked at the ash before looking up to Mahad, who was staring at Yugi. I looked over to him and he was holding the paper upside down as it dripped with water. And Yugi, yours is water. Odd, you both are complete opposite of each other. I knew Yugi and I were as different as night and day. He was gentle and understanding where I was fierce and quick to judge. He was calm and I was easily angered. He was a planner and I was an action taker. Now that I thought about it, the fact that I was fire and he was water made sense. Yugi, you're passionate like the water and I am aggressive like the fire. If we think about it, we are as different as the two, but fire and water have their similarities just like we do. Fire and water can be calm one moment and then in the next, they can be rapid, violent. Yugi smiled to me and nodded his head in agreement. That was deep, Heba, and perfectly true. And you are definitely hot-headed like the fire. I pouted at him, causing him to laugh. A slow smile made its way onto my face at the laugh. Honestly, since we came here, Yugi had seemed so much more alive and happy. I knew back home he was lonely since he didn't have any friends and Ji-chan was gone most of the time. And since coming here, we had met people who had already wanted to be friends with us. Yugi was finally getting out, having fun, meeting people. He seemed almost free. I smiled even more at that. It was always what I wanted for him. To act his age, to act like he was lively and hyper. Mahad broke me out of my thoughts by talking again. Yami's affinity is water as well and Atem's is fire. Both have decent control over their elements and know some justice to do with them, so when we get to that training point I will pair you with them, to see if they can get you to learn them. Just great, I so wanted to be taught by an overbearing hot-headed idiot like that. I scowled in my head but outside nodded and kept my face passive. Yugi looked a little nervous about the news. He always had less control over his emotions, kind of like Naruto. However, we're going to start with something simple today. Weapon practice. Mahad announced and I felt a sense of dread wash over me. Please, Ra. Don't let Yugi's bad aim get me killed. However, we're going to start with something simple today. Weapon practice. Mahad said and I ginned. I was excited to do all of this. I wanted to be able to learn how to wield kunai and shuriken since I started watching Naruto. Kunai were one of the ninja's most useful tools. Mahad smiled to us before sighing and looking over his shoulder to the training grounds. Yami, Atem, Joseph, come here." In a second the 3 boys were by their sensei's side. I looked them over and noted what they were wearing. Atem was dressed in a pair of thigh-length dark blue shorts, a black t-shirt that clung to his body, ninja gloves with metal on them and blue ninja shoes. Yami was in a pair of black thigh-length shorts, a dark blue t-shirt that clung to him, a black vest and a pair of blue ninja boots. Joey was in a pair of light blue thigh-length shorts, a green t-shirt and a black hoodie with fake fur around the hood, cuffs and hoodie hem. It reminded me of Kiba's hoodie. I actually wondered if it was one of his. Atem and Yami looked at us in surprise, Yami's brows furrowing in confusion, and Atem just glared at us. He must still be upset about me not telling him the reason why Mahad won't enter him in the exams. Atem, Yami, Joey, we are going to see if we can teach these boys here how to wield ninja tools such as kunai and shuriken. Are you sure they're smart enough to wield such weapons without getting themselves killed? Atem commented, and I inwardly sighed. This man was really setting himself up to get taught a lesson. Heba was never one to take things lying down. Give him a reason, and he would put you in your place. As if sensing my thoughts, Heba stiffened beside me and scowled at Atem. Are you sure they're smart enough to teach us? Why you little enough? I flinched as Mahad's yelled. I looked to him in shock as he glared at his Atem and Yami. You both are going to teach them, and you're going to do it right and without insults, am I understood? Atem and Yami nodded. Good, now you need to oversee their training while I go and inform Hokage-sama of everything. Now behave. Mahad vanished then with the simply teleportation jutsu. Atem sighed before motioning for us to follow him. We headed over to the trees that had target signs on them. Atem handed us a pouch with kunai in them and we strapped them to our thighs. Once we were done, we looked back up to the boys and Atem pointed to the trees. It's simple. You hold the kunai in your hand by the handle of it, and throw it at the target, like this. Atem grabbed a kunai and held it by the base on the white fabric that was wrapped around it. He brought it into his chest before flinging his arm out and releasing the kunai. It flew through the air with a whoosh sound before embedding in the tree in the center of the target sign. It's all about concentration and aim. He looked at us to make sure we understood. Heba and I nodded and Atem moved out of the way so that we could get to work. I looked over to the target and took a kunai out of the pouch. It felt metal but extremely light still. I turned it over in my hand before pulling the kunai into my chest. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly before flinging my arm out just like Atem did. When my arm was straight, I let the kunai go. It flew through the air and missed the tree, by a lot. Yami fell over laughing and Atem simply smirked, as if he had just been proven right. I scowled at them and glared at the ground. No one could be perfect on their first try. Whoosh! I blinked and looked up to where the sound of a kunai embedding in a tree was heard. I looked over to it and realized it was Heba who had thrown it, and it had hit the mark straight on. Dead in the center. I snapped my head to my brother who was smirking at a scowling Atem. Yami was still laughing, but this time at Atem. How the hell did you do that? No person could be that good on their first try, Atem shouted, and Heba arched a brow at him, crossing his arms over his chest. Who said this was my first time with this sort of thing? I blinked in confusion before my eyes widened. Heba had taken archery, knife throwing and karate when we were in middle school. I had also taken karate with him but never got into the other things. I preferred to focus on my school, and as a result, where Heba is better at the physical things, I am better at planning things. Atem scowled and Heba smirked before grabbing another kunai from the pouch. He closed his eyes and pulled his arm into his chest before flinging it out and throwing the kunai. It embedded in my target this time, right in the center. Heba opened his eyes and looked to Atem, smirking again. An unwritten law of a shinobi. Don't underestimate your opponents or teammates. You underestimated me, Atem, and I just proved you're wrong. Contrary to your belief, my brother and I are good but at different things. This is one of my strengths. Ask me to plan an attack or something and we're screwed. Ask Yugi and you would probably get a step-by-step plan. Heba lectured as he walked over to the kunai and pulled it from the tree. He placed it back in the pouch before turning to Atem. Atem simply scowled and looked away. I wasn't sure what he was more irritated about, the fact that he was proven wrong or the fact that Heba was teaching him while he was supposed to be teaching us. I went to grab another kunai and try again when I saw Heba stiffen out of the corner of my eye. I released the kunai and looked over to him, tilting my head to the side. He seemed unnerved, almost afraid of something. Fine, whatever, if you're so G. Atem started and Heba scowled at him. Shut up. What, Don Atem? Just shut up, Heba shouted, and Atem narrowed his eyes at him. Heba simply ignored the look, and Yugi walked over to me, lowering his voice once he was in earshot. Yugi, do you sense that? I blinked in confusion but closed my eyes and focused on my surroundings. That's when it hit me. It was an eerie feeling that caused the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It was as if someone was watching us, but not in a good way. My eyes snapped back open and connected with Heba's worried Amethyst. He appeared calm, but his eyes showed a different emotion. He was scared. We're being watched, I whispered, and Heba nodded his head. I turned back to Yami and Atem, who had clearly heard what I said, as they now looked worried as well. Where is Joey? I asked, and the boys looked around, instantly alarmed. Right when they were about to respond, a kunai flew in between us all with a piece of paper attached. I instantly recognized it. Exploding scroll. I yelled, and Heba grabbed my wrist, dragging me far away from the kunai. Heba and I headed into a nearby bush, taking cover as the scroll let off. Once the dust cleared, we peeked back into the area where there were now 5 ninja looking around for us. One of them had Joey and Dragon tied up. It also appeared that they were knocked out. My hands clenched into a fist as I tried to think of a way that we could get in there, knock them out, and save Joey. The only problem was Heba and I had little knowledge of how to work our chakra and jutsus. I had a better idea than Heba because of my knowledge of the show, but I didn't know if I could do anything. And running out there blindly would get me killed and everyone else. Yugi, Heba whispered, and I looked over to him. What are we going to do? I sighed and felt my heart clench. We have decided to become ninja to protect people and those we care about. And now, I felt so useless. The sound of fighting reached our ears, and Heba and I looked back to the field to see Atem and Yami attempted to fight the ninja. Atem had made a water clone and Yami was using a fire release jutsu, flame flower. I watched one of the enemy ninja throw a kunai and it embed in Yami's shoulder. He bit his lip in pain and gripped the weapon, yanking it out his shoulder and throwing it back at the ninja who threw it at him. My eyes widened and I felt my heart pound so hard in my chest I thought it was going to break. Tears filled my eyes as I watched the people I had come to consider friends get hurt. It wasn't fair. Yugi, we have to do something, Heba whispered, and I looked over to him. What could we do? It wasn't like we could stop time or run out there and kill them all. Heba must have noticed my look because he sighed and continued talking. Look, you watch this show a lot. There has to be some hand seals you have picked up. You must know how to do at least one jutsu. I looked back to the battle before closing my eyes and running through my head all of the battle scenes in Naruto. One stood out the most: the day Naruto stole the Forbidden Scroll. The hand seals to the jutsu, they were on the scroll and Naruto had performed them many times. I may know one. It's the Forbidden Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu. One Naruto himself is known for. Can you do it? Heba asked, looking over to me, and I sighed. I may be able to, but I don't know for sure. Just try. I am going to go see if I can peg one of them down with some kunai. Please just try, Yugi. We have to save them, Heba begged, and I nodded my head. Even if I couldn't, trying is better than doing nothing. Heba smiled before getting up and running off to get a better angle. Once he was gone, I closed my eyes and started to run the pictures in my head of the scroll and all the times Naruto performed the shadow clone. Tiger, ram, serpent, tiger, boar, ox, dog. I repeated that in my head as my hands slowly started to form the seals. It was good I mesmerized what each seal was, or else this would have been bad. Once I had the seals down, I tried to focus my chakra into my hands like I did with the paper. The bubbling feeling returned and I pushed myself to my feet, a knowing feeling in my body that told me this time it would work. I didn't know how I knew it, but I did. Tiger, ram, serpent, tiger, boar, ox, dog. Once my hands formed the final seal, my eyes snapped open and my mouth seemed to speak on its own. Forbidden Seal, Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu. There was a loud poof noise and all the fighting in the field stopped as we were suddenly surrounded by hundreds of me. My eyes widened and a large smile lit of my face at the fact that I was actually able to perform the multi-shadow clone. I wanted to scream and dance but knew this was definitely not the time. One of my clones stepped forward and growled at the person holding Joey. Release my friend. The enemy ninja scowled and rolled his eyes. Or what? My clone growled and launched himself at the man as the others started to move as well, tackling the men and landing punches on them. Seeing this as my chance, I ran over to Joey and pulled out a kunai. I sliced through the ropes binding him and did the same to Dragon. Once they both were free, I grabbed Joey's shoulders and started to shake him and call his name. Joey, wake up. Joey groaned and slowly started to open his eyes. I mentally cheered before hauling him to his feet and dragging him off to a bush. I sat him against a tree and looked back over to the field. My clones were standing over the ninja, and Yami and Atem had their arms wrapped around themselves, panting, but overall they seemed okay. Heba ran over to us then and slapped me on the shoulder, smiling brightly. You did it, Yugi. I can't believe you actually performed the jutsu. And neither can I, panted out as a wave of fatigue hit me at having to stabilize so many clones with so little control over my chakra. I placed a hand to my head as the sound of the clones vanishing reached my ears and my sight started to blur. I groaned and felt my eyes roll into the back of my head as the darkness swallowed me up. The last thing I remember is Heba screaming my name. Heba Pav. The second Yugi started to faint, I rushed over and wrapped my arms around his shoulders, calling his name as I pulled him to me. I looked up as Atem and Yami rushed over to me, looking concerned. He fainted, I stated, and they nodded their heads. It must have taken him a lot to stabilize all those clones, and he has no control over his chakra. I have never seen anyone but Naruto do that. It's amazing he can. And the amount of clones he produced, it was just unbelievable. Yami stated as he gazed down at my brother in awe. I nodded my head and Yami walked over, wrapping one arm under Yugi's knees and another around his waist. He lifted him into his arms and I pulled myself to my feet, helping Joey up once I was. What happened here? The four of us turned to look to Mahad, who had finally came back, but with the Anbu who were currently taking care of the ninja that attacked us. We were attacked. I answered simply and looked over to Yugi. My brother saved us. Mahad sighed and ran a hand through his brown hair before motioning for us to come with him. Yami, take Yugi to the hospital. Heba, Atem, Joey, come with me, we need to inform the Hokage about the attack. I was about to object, not wanting to leave my brother alone, but at the look on Mahad's face, I didn't have an option. I nodded and Yami walked off with Yugi as the rest of us followed Mahad back to the Hokage's tower. We entered into the room again where Sarutobi was once again with Iruka. I wondered if that man ever did anything beside the school mission desk and hang out in here. That is all I ever see him do, even when I was watching the anime. Well, besides the time he helped in the Chunin exams. Ah, Heba, welcome back. My eye twitched at that. I can't seem to stay out of this place, but then again he is the Hokage and the man needs to be informed of everything. All right boys, tell me what happened. I sighed and looked over to Joey to begin. All I remember is being attacked from behind. I was knocked out. For what happened after I was grabbed, you will have to ask Heba. How was I going to explain this one? Yugi performed a hidden seal jutsu. Hidden? You can't really explain how someone knows the hand seals to something that is forbidden. I swallowed thickly and tried to calm down the rapid beating of my heart as I recited everything that happened from when I got the feeling that we were being watched. Multi-shadow clone. That is a jutsu from the Forbidden Seals scroll. How could your brother do that? Sarutobi asked, and I sighed and ran a hand through my hair. Honestly, I have no idea how he knew it. For all I know, he could have been playing with hand seals and performed it on accident. That wasn't a complete lie. I didn't know how Yugi knew the hand seals. All I knew was he had seen them before, but that didn't mean that he could remember them. Or maybe it was a stroke of luck. I mumbled more as a thought than an answer to Sarutobi's question. The old man nodded his head as if accepting that as an answer. I felt my heart rate finally even out to a somewhat normal beat, glad I was no longer under the spotlight. I heard your training went well, and judging by what your brother did, it went even better than I expected. So I say we can assign you to a team. Usually I only have 3 to 4 people on a team, but this time I am allowing you and your brother to join Mahad's team. It was his idea, and honestly, with Yami and Atem on the team, it's perfect. Also, you all seem to have bonded through all of this. That's great. Joey shouted, making us all flinch. He threw his arms around my neck and hugged me to him as he beamed at the excitement at having us on the same team. I gently pried his arms off of me and bowed to Sarutobi before straightening up and offering the man a smile. Thank you. Sarutobi nodded and motioned for me to come forward, so I did. He handed me 2 Konohahite 8. I took both of them in my hands and looked over to Atem and Joey, seeing where they wore their own. Atem wore his on his upper arm like Shikamaru and Joey wore his on his forehead. I am going to go see Yugi, can one of you take me to him? Joey nodded before anyone else could and lead me out of the building. We wandered down the street a little bit before we eventually reached the hospital. We walked in and Joey asked someone for Yugi's room number. Once he had it, he led me down the hall and into the room where Yugi was sitting up on the bed. I smiled to Yami before walking over to the bed and Yugi's side. I handed him the Hite 8 and smiled to him. Welcome to Team 5, Yugi. Thanks for watching, guys. That's it for today, guys.